Welcome to the Dark Horse Paranormal Podcast Live. I'm your host, Chris Carr.
And I am Kristen Johnson.
Good evening.
Good evening.
How are you guys? We want to give a special shout out and thank you to our friend Greg Koss. And I hope you caught Greg and Reggie on a Perfectly Normal Paranormal show that was just on.
Mm-hmm.
Some amazing ITC. Want to give Greg a big shout out and for having us on at Metaphysical Crossings last night.
It was really
Speaking of
good.
ITC, we had quite the SD sessions last night.
Yes, we did.
We did. It really did appear that everybody was like kind of talking to each other, or talking to spirits, talking to each other, spirits talking to each other. A lot of talking going on, and it was quite good. Pretty dramatic, even.
It was very dramatic.
Times. We want to give a big thank you to our friends at Horn Paranormal Research, and hope you guys get home safely. Horns up.
Yes, horns up.
Kim and Scott, and a maker of these fine products like this EM pump here that Scott built, and I got this one too. And as I'm sure a lot of you guys know, we were just in South Carolina camping out with these folks, along with Amory Young, and Doug, and
Miss
Lynn Monet,
and Bill Matt.
Bill, Wild Man Bill, and a whole bunch of people, Brandon Cooper, and we've put a long list on our page there. Yeah. Katie and Katie, who will be on the show in a few weeks too. Supernatural Inc., just so you know, that's coming up. We really ought to post our schedule somewhere.
Yeah,
that'd make a lot of sense.
It would, wouldn't it?
I think we used to. I don't know. But how the hell are you guys? Hope you're having a good night. Hey there, Carol. What's going on, Carol Garcia? Anne-Marie Young, hello. Carol says last night was emotional. Yeah, it really was. It got into some deep, dark territory. Vixen Doe, good evening.
Good evening.
And yeah, well, without a whole lot of further ado, we'll bring on our guest. We'll get right into things. Our guest has over 50 years experience in all aspects of the paranormal field. He has appeared in half a dozen independent films along with network TV regarding all aspects of the paranormal. He's the founder of Bronxville Paranormal Society, director of the New York State UFO Project, also the New York State Sasquatch Organization, and the New York State Dogman Project. I'm sure they are all somewhat related, and we'll get into that. We love Dogman stories.
Yes, we do.
And werewolves and stuff like that.
I have a question for him.
Yeah, absolutely. We got questions. And he is a former co-host and podcaster of Beyond the Realm Digital Radio Network show. He's a member of MUFON. He's profiled in an exposés in New York's Outdoor News Magazine, the Times Community Newspaper of Hudson Valley, the Gothamist Internet Newspaper, profiled in author Frank R. Santariga's book titled Paranormal Family and Friends. And I suspect that might be a member of his family. We're going to talk about that.
To add that to our collection.
Profiled in Richard Moschella's book as well, Case Files of Paranormal Awakenings. Let's give him a big welcome. Al Santariga. Welcome to Dark Horse Paranormal.
Thank you guys for having me. It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Thank you. We appreciate you joining us. So yeah, that's quite the resume you've got going there. And I wanted to get into this because you've got a lot of different bases covered here. You're into UFOs, aliens. You're into the paranormal, as in like spirits and whatnot, and also cryptozoology. So how did this all start for you?
Well, it all started with my family. My mother was a psychic, and so she would always have people come to her when she slept. My father used to make her sleep in another room because she'd be talking all night in her sleep. And my brother was one of the first parapsychologists in the United States. And he worked with Han Holzer's right-hand man, and he worked with his psychic as well as the psychic Ethel as well. And so there was always a zillion books in the house on everything under the sun, And
is that Frank Santariga?
Yeah, that's my brother Frank. Yes, yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Oh, that's really cool. And then we were just talking about hands also before the show, and
Yeah.
compass, old school tools. But we'll get
Yeah, I
more.
love hand tools. Absolutely, yeah. My aunt was a white witch. My cousin was a black witch, and so the paranormal to me was just normal growing up. I didn't know it wasn't paranormal. Like it was just something that happened in our family. They would do seances and they would do Ouija board stuff, and we were kids. All of my cousins. We'd all sleep over each other's house. We all lived in the same neighborhood, growing up in New York in the city, everybody in the building was related. So we'd go from one apartment to the other. And so we would come and go there. And like when I'd be sleeping over at my cousin Anthony's house, and they'd be doing what you would call a seance or something. We'd be hanging out in the hallway, hiding in the shadows, watching, because we were really too young to participate, but we've seen a lot of stuff, and pretty amazing stuff. So not until I got older and I started talking to my friends about it, and they were like, no, that's not normal, dude, and I was like, okay.
Going back to what you mentioned about your mother talking in her sleep, so people would come over, like stand in the room while she was talking in her sleep to get
spirits would come to her at night.
Oh, okay.
And she would have conversations. She would have conversations with spirits at night. Yeah, my father couldn't see. No, my father couldn't see him, but he could hear her talking all night, and he'd make her sleep in another room because he worked construction, and he had to get up at 4:30 in the morning and go to work. So,
gotcha.
Yeah.
You can't have that. And
no, absolutely not.
That's a better scenario than the one I pictured. I was like, that's really
no. Yeah, that wasn't that's strangers.
1:30. No. I gotta go stand in your mother's room for a minute. Well, I get the job.
No, she didn't do readings or anything like that. She would just have visions and stuff, like premonitions. And like I said, when she was in a subconscious state, spirits would come to her, and sometimes she didn't remember anything, but I could hear her talking all night in the next room. Sometimes I get up and look, and she'd be sound asleep, but she'd be speaking. And it was funny because my mother only spoke Italian, so I guess I don't know what the spirits were speaking, if they were speaking Italian or English. I mean, she understood English, but she didn't realize she spoke broken English. So, it would be funny, to hear my mother talking in Italian. And I was like, man, I wonder what they're speaking,
Right. What are they saying? Wow. Oh, that is cool, though. I like that. That's a cool way to grow up and just have it be accepted. A lot of people don't have that acceptance growing up, or they feel shunned in some way. You mentioned the subconscious, and I think you're right there. I think a lot of this stuff is all tied to the subconscious.
Oh, absolutely, because your subconscious you're wide open at night. You don't have any filters, and if you have that ability to, go out into the ether and and communicate with other spirits from the other side, it's just amazing. I mean, when I was 5 years old, my grandmother lived with us, and when she passed away, I got her bedroom, and I was sleeping in her bed and her pillows and her sheets, and we had just buried her down, across the street, down the block at the funeral parlor we had. And then I would go into bed at night, and she would come to me every night for like a week straight and tuck me in and kiss me and tell me how much she loved me and everything. And I couldn't tell my father because he didn't believe in the paranormal. My father was strictly, nuts and bolts kind of guy. Even my father, even seeing it with his best friend, say they had a spirit run through the engine block of his car while they were fishing out on Long Island Point out in Montauk. and looked right into their car and went like, oh, like that. And my father's friend was like, okay, it's time to go. And my father's like, no, I'm not done fishing yet. You know what I mean? But he didn't believe in it. But when I told my mother, I said, hey, I talked to my mother in Italian. I said, grandma came and seen me, tucked me in last night. And she's like, that's okay. It's your grandmother, she loves you. She's just watching over you. She's only going to be here, I think my mother said, for like 3 days, and then she would leave. But I think she hung around for a couple extra days.
Wow, that is so cool. How old were you? Sorry.
5 years old. Yeah. So that's when it started. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
I got started young. Yeah.
Yeah, it's an early awakening. That is also like Kristen and I. We had haunted childhoods ourselves, and that's why we always ask that question, because most of our guests have had some sort of paranormal, whether it's ghosts or UFOs or something. They had Bigfoot looking at them, when they were a kid. So yeah, it's really interesting to us that you pursue it later in life. It's almost like some part of you is trying to make sense of it, or I don't know, maybe it is open that you just can't close. You know what I mean?
I mean, I had my first UFO sighting at 10. I had my first Bigfoot experience at 12.
Wow.
So this stuff just my brother always said I was a magnet. He always called me a magnet because he never really had any experiences when he went out or anything. Not that they didn't get capture evidence on his investigations, but he didn't. I think he's seen one UFO his whole life when he was like 16 years old, riding a bicycle over the Alps in Italy. You know what I mean? They see the UFO, and that was. Meanwhile, I've had I can't even count how many UFOs I've seen and how many different shapes and sizes and, all the crazy stuff I experienced. Yeah.
That's really interesting to us. I know we've talked to people that, see them almost like on a daily basis. And sometimes they're not like a full-fledged thing in the sky. It might just be like an orb or something found around, and they got pictures of it. And it's crazy, The UFOs to you, here's a good question. Nuts and bolts or some kind of consciousness, or both?
I've seen nuts and bolts for sure. I've seen nuts and bolts. There's no doubt about it. What we're experiencing now, like this plasma kind of thing, these crafts, I guess you want to call them plasma crafts. I'm not sure they're extraterrestrial. I think they may be more interdimensional, but I don't know. I mean, I just don't know.
We understand.
Yeah, it's really confusing.
We understand.
One time, I definitely thought they were just nuts and bolts, and that's it. And it's just a futuristic. It's probably what I grew up thinking. Race of people visit or whatever. And now you got to really question it. It's like, wow, I don't know what that was.
Do they come out of a portal? Where do they come? They don't just come from like the galaxy, or do they and come through the portal? We don't know. So many questions.
Sure.
Yes, I mean it's a little conjecture. Absolutely. I mean, there are no experts. I don't like when people say that I'm an expert. I'm not an expert. I'm not an expert in anything. Ask my wife; she'll tell you. I've just had a lot more experiences with the paranormal. Let's call it the paranormal, because I believe in the grand scheme of the universe, of the ether of the universe. Everything is normal. You know what I mean? That's just where I'm at. And I had an ascension two winters ago that really opened my eyes. I was never a metaphysical kind of person. And man, where my eyes opened. And, so like I said, I've seen enough crafts to know what I thought was nuts and bolts, what I thought were points of light, or these, like I said, these other crafts that I think there are two different. I think you have your extraterrestrials from deep space, and I think you have your interdimensional aliens from different realms. I really do. And whether they need to come through a portal to get here or not, I don't know. I believe there are portals all over the planet. I think if you're advanced enough, you know how to open them and close them at will.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
we understand.
Teach yourself to see them. And you said something Did you say 2 witches ago? I'm sorry. What was that? Something that opened your eyes?
Ascension.
Ascension.
Oh, I had an ascension 2 winters ago. 2 winters ago, yeah.
Can you
that was
elaborate on it?
Oh yeah, I was sleeping one night in my bed, and I thought I was having a dream. Felt like an outer body experience, and something was pulling me up towards space, deep space. And there was a voice talking to me. Whatever was pulling me was talking to me. I couldn't see it. And we were on this rainbow bridge that were the most purest colors. I can't even, words can't even describe how beautiful and how pure these colors were. They were amazing. And as we were going up this bridge, up this bridge towards the deep space, this voice that was guiding me was telling me, tonight's the night. We're going to give you the secrets of the universe, and we're going to show you stuff. And then as I'm going up, I'm seeing like mathematical equations, and then I'm seeing Einstein and Tesla and, all these great inventors. And I'm seeing musical notes flown by, because I'm a musician, a guitar player, but I'm seeing all these musical notes going by, and I'm seeing Bach and Beethoven and, all the greats. And I'm looking at all the stuff, and I'm like trying to take it all in, and I'm like, holy crap, this is crazy, And we reach a point, and then we start to descend back down. And as we're going down, the voice told me, I'm gonna give you the secrets to the universe. And he said, the first one is frequency, second one is vibration, third one was consciousness, and as we're getting closer and closer, I think he said there was 4. And as we're getting closer and closer to my house, I can see my house. And I'm like, come on, dude, tell me the last one. I don't want to wake up not knowing the last one, And he said, intention. And I was like, wow, that's crazy, And just as I'm going, I feel like I'm going back into my body. I say to myself, I have a thought. I say, man, what a crazy dream. And it stopped me from going into my body. And it was like, it pulled me back out and said, no, this is not a dream. This really happened, And I didn't know I was having an ascension or anything like that, And he's like, this really happened. And he said, when the snow melts, we had about 14 inches of snow in the backyard at the time. When the snow melts, you'll see a sign. Okay. Well, that was in February. A couple of weeks go by, the snow melts, and I'm looking for a sign in the yard, not knowing what the sign is going to be. I happen to have 2 backyards. I have an immediate backyard, then I have a stone wall, and I have a far backyard. And I didn't see anything in the immediate backyard, so I went behind the stone wall. And when I went behind the stone wall, there were quartz crystal stones the size of bowling balls set up around a tree in a circle.
Wow.
And I was like, I know for a fact there are no quartz crystal stones in any of my neighbor's property or my property. Because when my kids were small, I have like 100 acres of mountain behind me. My kids ran through those woods, building forts and BB guns and everything else. And I never tripped over any stone that had any quartz in it, So I looked at these stones, and a little voice in my head said, touch it. So I touched it, and it felt like it was vibrating. And then the voice in my head said, now touch the tree. And I touched the tree, and I was like, and I felt the energy go through my body and into the tree. And I was like, whoa, what's going on here? I don't know what's going on. It just blew my mind. So I called a friend of mine who's very well educated in all aspects of the paranormal. And I said, dude, I explained to him, and he's like, you had an ascension. He goes, welcome to my world now. He goes, all of your gifts. He always said I had like gifts as far as being psychic, but I never claimed I was psychic. I said, yeah, maybe intuitive or, something like that, but I don't believe to have any gifts. And he said, now all of your gifts are going to be like through the charts now. And I said, well, what's the purpose of the stones in the tree? And he said, whenever you have a question about anything, he said, go sit on those stones, put your bare feet on the dirt so you're grounded in Mother Earth. He said, sit on the stones and put your back up against that tree and meditate. And he goes, and then you can ask the universe anything, and you'll get the answer. Whatever you want, you'll get the answer. And I was like, okay, And I took martial arts my whole life. I've got 5 different belts and 5 different styles, and meditation has never been a big thing for me. My brain is always going 100 miles an hour. I can't. But recently I found Native American flute music that just puts me in that zone like that. It just puts me in a meditated state. I put my headphones on. I listen to the flute music. I go sit on the stone. I ground myself. I put my back against that tree, and I'm off in the ether, And if there's something weighing on my mind, then I'll ask the universe, because all of these great people like Da Vinci and Einstein and Tesla and all these people said their genius was given to them from above. They didn't come up with any of these musical notes. Like Bach said, he didn't write it; it was given to him. Einstein said he didn't come up with these formulas. The formulas were given to him. So it's all given to him from a higher source. So my friend said, and he also told me, he said, now that you've had this ascension, before you go on investigations, you really have to, whatever you were doing before, you have to take it to another level now, because he goes, your aura is so bright now. He says, you're like a beacon for anything, and you have to protect yourself more.
Sure.
And so that started that, you know what I mean? And then I started getting in more, learning more and more about the metaphysical stuff and how it works. I'm supposed to go to a psychic fair on Saturday, weather permitting, because the weather may be really crappy up here. I don't know, but that they're talking snow squalls and ice and everything. So I may not go if it's like that, but that's something I would have never. I would have.
All right. We were talking about time to head south. We were talking about South Carolina before the show, and having just come back.
I'm a cold weather guy.
You're like 2 months ahead of us.
Are you really?
Yeah.
I
love skiing and stuff like that. My father and my family, we grew up with, we were born with skis. Like when I was 3 years old, I got my first set of skis. I taught my kids how to ski. I love to ski. I really do. My brother's phenomenal. He was a phenomenal skier too. My brother was like, my God, he was amazing. I mean, I could ski backwards, like if I'm teaching people, but the stuff my brother did, it was a whole nother level, skiing. Yeah.
Well, that's still pretty impressive. Skiing backwards is not easy.
Well, when you're teaching people, you have to learn how to ski backwards, because you have to look at who you're teaching.
Right. Yeah, I can't do it. I'm over in a second. But Amber Young wanted to know if it was an oak tree.
Yes.
No, it was not an oak tree. I believe, now don't quote me on this, I believe it was a spruce tree, but I'm not 100% sure, but I'm like 75% sure it was spruce.
Carol says, I sure hope they are wrong, Al. I'm in New Jersey, close to you.
Yeah, me too, Carol.
Yeah, just to let you know, Carol, we waved as we were going by Jersey, and I wanted to type you that, but I forgot.
And there's North Carolina. Speaking of Carolina,
there we
Cryptid
go.
and Paranormal Projects. What's going on? How are you guys?
Hi, guys.
Excellent.
Oh, is that
excellent.
Tommy? Yeah, that's Tommy. That's my paisan.
My son.
This is I'm here supporting my Goomba, Al.
It's my Goomba.
Squatch father.
Tommy's originally from New Jersey. Yeah. Yeah, that's my nickname, the Squatch Father. Tommy gave it to me. Oh no, it was Chris Reinhardt from Berkshire Mountain Bigfoot.
Excellent. Yeah, very involved in that. And similar to the question I had about the nuts and bolts and consciousness, these Bigfoot, the skunk ape, do you think they're interdimensional or living, breathing creatures we just can't seem to see too often?
I believe they're flesh and blood when they're here in our realm. but I also believe that they can go interdimensional. I also believe that they can raise their vibration to a certain level where they change the spectrum of light they're in, and we can't see them. You know, I've interviewed enough people who said they had them on the crosshairs of their scopes on their guns, you know, to get a better look at them, not to shoot them. And 1 minute they were there, and the next minute they weren't. And I don't think necessarily that, you know, they're blinking in and out like I Dream a Genie, but I think if they raise their vibration and change the spectrum of light they're in, then, you know, we're so limited in our vision. So it would be easy for them to just make it look like they disappeared. So yes, I believe they're both.
That's a great answer.
Mhm.
And that's a cool way to think about it, because we tend to want to pigeonhole everything one way or another. You know, they're either this or that, and it can be a combination of things.
Sure.
Maybe they are interdimensional, you know, and they can kind of move in and out, but that doesn't mean they're not, you know, living, breathing creatures. You know, just that they're not necessarily populating here, or if they are there, they do a good job hiding those babies. So I've heard talked about like predator fur. Somebody was talking about, I don't know, maybe it was you on
Oh yeah, the
Synchronicity.
glimmer man, they call them glimmermen when they do that predator mode. Yeah.
We saw something like that in a tree, and it was like
Yeah.
we're watching Predator or something.
But I don't
was
feel
bizarre.
it was that.
But we don't
low.
think it was that. But it
No.
was breaking branches and moving, and
It was
you could see it.
huge.
It was like
bigger
shimmering or
than-
something. It was
yeah.
really
No,
weird.
maybe it was one. Don't
I don't
you
know.
know,
We had a lot of other things go on
Yeah.
that day, like paranormal phenomena at the particular location. That was
And it wasn't very
pretty-
nice. And we
pretty
think
crazy.
that's what it was.
so it was something.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's hard to put a name to it. So
yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, unless you actually see it in its flesh and blood form, you wouldn't know what you're dealing with. You know what I mean? So it's hard. It's hard. Like when I tell people all the time when they go into the woods, I got a lot of friends who just strictly Bigfooters, you know, and half of them are on the flesh and blood side, and half of them are on the woo side, which is a term I hate more than anything in the world. Right? Let's call it paranormal. You know, let's call it what it is. I don't like the term mind speak. It's mental telepathy. Let's call it what it is. You know, don't try to dumb it down. But I tell them all the time, when you guys go out there investigating, you know, not only protect yourself physically for, you know, other creatures that are in the woods, but protect yourself spiritually, because you don't know what you're going to come up upon in the woods. You know what I mean? We've come across so many different things in the woods that, you know, like when our psychic tells us we're going to see this and we're going to see that, I got to be brutally. She's from Arkansas, 5th generation. She's half Native American, and she says you're going to see this and we're going to see that. We laugh at her. We think she's out of her mind. Like, what are you smoking? You know? And then when we go out, we don't even think about what she says. You know, like we're not looking for what she says because we just think it's so ridiculous. But at the end of the night, when it's all said and done, everything she says that we're going to experience or see, we do. And it's just mind-boggling. It really is.
wow, that's cool. Like a puff pass at that moment. Like,
Puff,
what are you
puff,
smoking?
and we don't charge for our services when we're helping people, you know, but the paranormal stuff, I never charge anybody for my service. And whenever we do an investigation, no matter what it is, a cryptid, UFO, or paranormal, who's ever on the team that's coming, everybody gets read by the psychic beforehand, because we've had to leave people behind on investigations who had subconscious fear, and the locations we were going to had dark things there, and they would have attached to one or the other or both. So we have to leave people behind. And I tell people all the time, don't be offended if, you know, she tells me you have to stay, then you have to stay. That's it. You know, there's no two ways about it.
Yeah, that's something. And that's pretty cool. I've never heard of that. Kind of like it's like a prerequisite to getting into the investigation. We got to check you out psychically, make sure you're not going to get an attachment. And that's not a bad idea. Attachments are no fun.
No, absolutely not.
What do you do with attachments if you have an attachment yourself or a team member? How do you handle that?
Oh, well, I've had two. I've only had two. I only had two. One was we were investigating a cemetery that was part of an abandoned insane asylum. And as soon as we got there, I like to do day and night. You know, I like to see how the energy is during the day and how the energy is at night. And as soon as we got there, I felt something attached to me. And my partner, Brian, he was very keen. He's a very sensitive guy, does remote viewing and stuff. And he said to me, dude, what's the matter with you? And I was in denial. I was like, nothing. He goes, dude, you don't look like you. And I was like, well, then who the hell do I look like? And he was like, dude, you don't even sound like you. And I'm like, I can hear myself talking. I sound like me, you know, but he knew I had an attachment. And when we left the location, the attachment broke off, you know, so I was pretty lucky. The only ones I've ever had have been like, just, we'll call them energy vampires. You know what I mean? They weren't anything dark or negative. When I went to do an investigation, we were doing an investigation at a old restaurant. It was from the 1800s, and hadn't seen the psychic who was working on that investigation with us in a long time. And I had just had my ascension. And when I walked in, she was like, oh my God, Al, what happened? And I said, I shaved my head. And she goes, I'm not talking about you shaving your head. She goes, you're lit up like a Roman candle. You had an ascension. And I was like, yeah, you know, I said, she goes, oh my God, you know, she's like, she couldn't believe it. And she seen it immediately, you know. And then that night, that day, I got an attachment at that hotel. I was working with equipment that I've worked with for years, and I couldn't figure out how to work my cameras. I couldn't figure out how to do anything. And I was overheating, and I was going to the bathroom because I was flush. I was trying to cool off with water. And the psychic had been upstairs at a different part of the building. And when she came down, she said, oh my God, Al, what happened to you? And I was like, what's the matter? She goes, you got like a dark cloud around you now. She goes, you got an attachment. And she said, all right, sit down. And she sat me down. Oops. She sat me down because I talk with my hands. That's what these things happen. I'm Italian.
I just did that the other day.
And she sat me down, and she did a cleansing on me, you know, and I felt the energy. And I said, hand to God, I swear to God, I felt the energy go from the bottom of my feet and pop out of the top of my head, like literally go boop, pop right out of the top. And she looked at me, she goes, it just left you, right? And I go, yeah. She goes, I seen it come out of your head. And she goes, okay, you're okay now. She goes, it wasn't anything negative. It was just something that wanted to live through your eyes. I said, well, you know, it screwed up my whole day because I couldn't work any of my equipment. I didn't know what the hell I was doing, you know, because it was from the 1800s. I didn't know what all the ITC stuff I was using that day was, you know. But as soon as she got rid of it from me, I packed up and left. I said, okay, I'm done. I'm out of this place, you know.
I'm out.
But never had, that's about it though. I've had those two attachments there. And like I said, I'd call them more energy vampires than anything dark or negative, you know. I've been very lucky. I've been to like a couple of places. I was with my brother one time. I was 16 years old. My brother had his team. He was living out on Amityville, Long Island, you know. And he had put his team together, and he says, come on, we're going to go to the Amityville house. We're going to go investigate it. So I said, he goes, you're going to be my photographer, because that's what I was going to school for, photography. So I said, okay. And the closer we got to the property, the more negative energy I got. And when we pulled into the driveway, I was like, dude, I'm not going in. You know, I mean, it's bad out here on the grounds. I'm not going in. And he's like, what do you mean? You're my photographer. I gave him my cameras. I said, you're the photographer now, Frank. I'm not going in, you know. And I sat out in the driveway, and I seen shadow figures running from cars to car. I mean, from tree to tree while I was sitting in the car. And they were in there, and they did the investigation, and nothing happened to any of them, you know. And they came out, and it was all fine. But the vibe I got was that if I would have went in there, something bad would have happened, and I wasn't going in. You know, like my gut feeling said, don't do it, and I won't do it. You know? And that happened to me another time. A friend of mine was going to school in Connecticut for auto repair, and he had met some guy living in a dorm with him, lived up there, lived up in the middle of nowhere in this little rinky-dink town. And he said, yeah, we got this mansion in the middle of the woods around this giant lake. Used to be owned by these really, really rich people, but nobody goes in there because the place is haunted. So my friend looked at me, said, road trip? I go, road trip, yeah, you know. So me, him, and another one of our friends, we jumped in his, he had a Barracuda at the time. We jumped in his Barracuda. We went up to Connecticut and we met him in town, and he took us out to this place. And again, as soon as I got, and like I said, the driveway was like a mile just to get to the house. You know what I mean? And then when it opened up to this house, it was like just enormous. And I was like, no, I got a bad vibe. I'm not going in. You know, I'm not going in. So I started walking around the house on the outside, taking photographs on the outside, had a boathouse, had a beach. And I caught a picture of a woman in a black dress up on one of the top floors, looking out a window, looking at me. And I gave the guys my camera. They went in, and the stairwell was like 8 feet wide. It was all marble, and it went up. And one of my friends got thrown down that stairwell, head over heels. And my other friend, Harry, he was down in the basement. They had like a game room down in the basement, and he got scratched. He got like his shirt ripped off. He said he was fighting something. He didn't know even what it was. You know, he thought it was like a creature. And he came out. His shirt was ripped, and he had a scratch across his 3 scratches across his chest. And I was sitting in the car. I turned the car around so it was pointed out because I wanted to get out of Dodge. And man, we left that place in a cloud of dust, you know, and we couldn't get out of there fast enough, you know.
Yeah.
What do you think it was that was haunting the place?
I think the people who lived there were probably, you know, into dark stuff, maybe from Europe. When it came over from Europe, they brought their traditions with them and were doing God knows what on that property because they were filthy rich, you know, like we're talking about people like Rockefeller kind of rich, you know. And yeah, and my friend said when you went in the house, like all the chandeliers and marbles, like bust and stuff, everything was there. Like nobody ever went in to steal anything, because everybody was so afraid of this property that no one would, like no local kids wouldn't go there to hang out and party or anything. Not even like at the boathouse or anything, you know.
Wow.
So yeah, it was crazy. I mean, like I said, I get a bad gut feeling like that. Then, you know, when it's that bad, I don't go in. I was like, yeah, you know what? I'm going to pass on this, you know?
Yeah. The gut feeling or sick to your stomach, as Steve mentioned that.
Yeah.
I think he's gotten that. He investigates as well. As a good friend of ours, Steve Auclair. Hello, buddy. We got to catch up. I know you called me the other day, by the way. Sorry.
Anne-Marie Young said it was probably cursed, and I believe that.
Probably cursed.
Probably was.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe.
God only knows what they were doing in there. You know, I mean,
put some,
who knows?
Protective entities in there to guard the place or something along those lines. Protected grounds, Carol says. Sorry, my cat got in somehow. He's a troublemaker. He's causing all kinds of problems down here.
He's got wires wrapping around my leg and stuff. My foot.
I thought Kristen was getting frisky, and it was the damn cat.
Sorry.
Damn it.
Yeah, I got 2 cats. So one is his name is Spanky. He's a crier. He never shuts up, man. He's just, sometimes he'll come in the room when I'm doing an interview and he'll just start crying and crying and crying. And everybody hears him on the other side. You know, like, oh, your cat's making a lot of noise. Like, yeah, he's a moaner. You know. Yeah. And then we have another one, tiny Tim, and he's like greased lightning. You can't even, when he moves, you can't even see him. He's like the Flash. Boom.
Love it. I love it.
That's so funny.
Would that be along the lines of, say, the darkest encounter you've had? Like,
oh, no. The darkest encounter I had to do with the son of Sam and the building he lived in. Yeah, that was definitely by far the most darkest thing I ever experienced. Yeah.
Do tell.
Please, yes, tell us.
Okay. in 1989, I started working at the post office at Yonkers, in North Yonkers. And they would send you out with the senior guys to learn, like you'll go out with one guy that's a raw route, then you'll go out with one guy as a building route. So you see how they're done, how everything is done differently. And I was out with one of the older guys who had a building route. And he starts telling me this story. He's like, yeah, he says, if you ever go to this building, don't ever go down in the basement. And he's telling me the story how his buddy was the mailman there. And that how this guy went down into basement on Hallows Eve one night, and he went down in the basement to use the bathroom because that's where the bathroom was, down in the basement. And he had been the mailman in that building for years. He never had any issues. And the building just happened to be the same building that Son of Sam lived in. Okay. And he was in the bathroom using the facilities, and he heard chanting going on in the garage outside. The bathroom was down on the first floor of the garage because it led out to the backyard where the pool was and the tiki bar and everything. So when people were using the pool, they would use that bathroom down there. And he heard all this chanting and all this stuff going on. He didn't know what the hell was going on. And he opens up the door. And when he opens up the door, he sees 6 figures in hoods around the fire, a pentagram fire, billowing up black smoke, and the smoke is bouncing off the garage roof. And he said some gray smoke came out of the middle of the fire, and he believed it was the devil himself, and the thing made a beeline right for him, like it's seen him peeking out the bathroom door. And it made a beeline for him, and it told him, he said, for what you've seen here today, I'll have your soul.
It told him that?
Yes, it told him that. It
oh,
said,
my God.
For what you've seen here today, I'll have your soul, which freaked this guy out. And this guy went back to the post office, told the manager what happened. He says, it's never going back in that building. As a matter of fact, he was so distraught that he took a couple of months off of personal leave, and while he was off on personal leave, he became an alcoholic, and then his wife left him. He lost his wife, he lost his kids, he lost his house, and he was like really, struggling to deal with what he's seen, because this guy wasn't a religious guy, he believed in Christ and everything. And while all this was going on, he got a bid at another station in East Yonkers. Yonkers is a really big city. It's like the 3rd largest city in New York. And the post office had like 7 different stations. So he went from North Yonkers to East Yonkers. And when he went to East Yonkers, his life started to turn around again, He cleaned up his act. He got an apartment on the route. He was like the mayor out there. Everybody knew him, and all of this stuff, and everything was going good, and life was good. And then one day, at some point, he started having issues with a black cat at the end of one of the dead-end streets, and he couldn't get to the last house on the street because the cat would attack him all the time. So he was leaving the neighbors' mail, either leaving their mail either with the neighbors, or he was bringing it in the post office, and he put it on hold. So the people finally said, what's going on with our mail? And he called the post office, and the manager said, yeah, we have all your mail here in a box. You guys must have been on hold. And they're like, no, we weren't on hold. He's just not delivering our mail. So when he came off the street, the supervisor asked him, why aren't you delivering these people's mail? What's going on? And he said, I can't get to the house. They got this attack cat. Every time I go there, it attacks me because I spray with the dog spray, but it does nothing to this cat. It just keeps coming. So the manager says, okay, I'll take it out on the Saturday, and I'll talk to the people about their cat. So he goes out there, he drops the mail off, and he says, look, you got to keep your cat in the house because the mailman can't get there. I said, otherwise, put your box on the fence across from the driveway. I'll put the mail in there. And the people go, what are you talking about? We don't have a cat. We've never even seen a cat on this block. Now, at the end of at the end of this street was like almost like a little park setting. It was like a grassy knoll and stuff, you know what I mean? And so my brother-in-law actually was that carrier's floater, would do the route when he was off. And so they asked my brother-in-law, the manager asked my brother-in-law, he said, have you ever seen a black cat out there? And my brother-in-law said, no, I've never seen cats out there. I can deliver that mail whenever I'm out there. I always have no problem delivering it. So then one of our best friends was the truck driver. So he asked the truck driver, he said, hey, have you ever had an issue delivering packages to that street? You know, and he says, no. He says, you ever get attacked by a cat? And the truck driver laughed at him. He said, no, what are you, crazy? I've been delivering this street for 20 years. I've never got attacked by a cat. So couldn't figure out where this cat came from. So at one point, this is going on all summer long. And the cat starts to talk to him through mental telepathy.
Come on.
No, this is what this guy is telling me, right? Now, I got to be brutally honest. At this point, I'm a newbie. He's a senior guy. I think he's pulling my leg, okay? But I'm listening to everything because he doesn't know that my brother-in-law works in that station. I'm going to call my brother-in-law when I get home, right? So the cat starts talking to him, and the cat says, by the end of the summer, I'll have your soul. That's what the cat told him. By the end of this summer, I'll have your soul. End of the summer rolls around. The last day of the summer rolls around, and the carrier doesn't come back to the station. So usually the truck driver is the last guy in. So the truck driver says, hey, have you seen so-and-so out on the route? He says, yeah, I've seen his car out there, you know, haven't seen him. He says, could you do me a favor? Can you go back out there and get him? Tell him to come in. I want to go home. It's the end of the day, you know? She says, yeah, I'll drive back out there. And he drives back out there, and he gets out there, and he pulls down that dead-end street, and there's the mailman hanging from that tree in the grassy knoll. He committed suicide.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, so now I'm hearing this story, and again, I think this guy is pulling my chain, right? So I get home. And I call my brother-in-law up. I said, hey, do you know this guy so-and-so? Yeah. You his floater? Yeah. Did he commit suicide on a street out in the dead end? He said, yeah. I said, was there a cat involved? And he's like, yeah. You know, my brother-in-law goes, but my brother-in-law took over that route when he passed, and he never had any issues. So now I get promoted to regular. And the manager says, listen, I need you to build this route down for me for like 3 months or 6 months. The carrier's hurt, you know. I was like, yeah, it was a really, really upscale neighborhood, all high-end doctors, lawyers, you know, nurses and stuff like that, and teachers. And I was like, yeah, I have no problem holding that route down, you know. I know I'll know what I'm doing every single day, you know. And so as I'm about to go out, he says, just do me a favor. He says, whatever you do, don't go down in the basement. And whatever you do, don't use the bathroom in the basement. Because I don't care if you have to drive back to this office to go to the bathroom. Don't use the bathroom in that basement. And I said, why? And he goes, just don't use the bathroom. All right. So I didn't tell him I knew, right? So I go there, and I didn't know it was the Son of Sam building at the time because they changed the number on it. Okay. So when I get there, I'm looking at this building. I'm like, why does this building have an odd number on it when it's on either side of the street? You know, that was like the first red flag for me. When you're a mailman, that's not supposed to happen. So I go in and I start delivering the mail, and I had a doorman, and I met the doorman. I'm talking to the doorman, and I met the maintenance guy, and I'm talking to the maintenance guy. He lived in the building, and I'm meeting the people as they come and go. And this building, like I said, had a lot of executives and stuff living in it, and they got a lot of mail, you know, certified mail and registered mail and all kinds of stuff that needed to be signed for, you know. Mm-hmm. So normally the doorman would sign for it if he was there. If he wasn't there, you know, you just leave a notice in the box and they would come and get it. Or, you know, like if I ran into the super would say, oh, he's not here, but his wife is down at the pool with the kids. Go downstairs to the pool and get it signed down there, you know. So I spent the whole summer going down in the basement. I can't tell you how many times I used that bathroom down there. Okay. And sitting down, these people were great to me, gave me lunch, gave me soda, gave me ice cream. You know what I mean? You get lunch too, sit down with us, have, and this is going on all year long. And I think I took the route over in November, and I was just about coming around. It was October when I went to do the route, and I was doing the route. It was October, and I noticed it was Halloween. Oh, I had the whatchamacallit. I asked the maintenance guy. I said, "Hey, can you take me upstairs to Berkowitz's apartment?" And he's like, "Yeah." He said, "I goes, anybody live there?" He goes, No, we don't rent that apartment. We don't even put anything in that apartment. That apartment is just locked up." I said, "Well, can I see it?" And he's like, "I'll take you up there, but I'm not going in." I was like, "Okay." And as we're going up in the elevator, I think Berkowitz lived like on the 5th floor or something. It was like 6-story building. And as we're getting up, you could feel the heaviness the closer you got to that floor. I mean, when that elevator door opened, I thought the devil was going to be standing in front of me. That's how heavy it was.
Wow.
So we go down, he opens the door, I go in, and I walk around. I look out the back window, which overlooked the pool, which overlooked the house with the dog. Sam was a German Shepherd that lived across the street that was telling him to kill these people. I go in his bedroom, I go in his kitchen, I go through the whole apartment, and I'm thinking to myself, the energy in here is so heavy. It's so with negativity. How do the people above, below, and on each side of him live here? They have to be feeling this energy coming through the walls.
Yeah.
And I couldn't figure out how these people were living there. I was like, I didn't want to get off the elevator. So then Halloween comes, I have to use the bathroom. The doorman's nowhere to be found, because the doorman had a bathroom in his office too, which I would use most of the time because it was right there on the main floor. So the doorman's not around, and I'm thinking, oh man, it's Halloween. There's nobody here. I got to use the bathroom. I don't want to drive all the way back to the post office just to use the bathroom. I said, let me go ring the super's bell. I ring the super's bell. Nowhere to be found. I go knock on this door. Nobody answers. I was like, oh, well, I guess I'm going downstairs. So I just told myself, oh, don't, I just psyched myself up. I said, look, you've been in this bathroom 1,000,000 times. Nothing's going to happen. I go in, I close the door, I'm doing my business, and I start hearing chanting. And every hair on my body stood up on end, and I'm hearing chanting. And I crack the door open just a wee bit, and I peek outside, and there's people in robes around the pentagram fire, and there's black smoke billowing up out of the fire. And I close the door, and I lock it, and I put my back against the door so that you can't open the door. And I sat there for like an hour and a half. And eventually, the doorman came back from his lunch break, and the super came out, and they seen all the mail bags in the lobby with in front of all the mailboxes. And they said, well, let's find Al, and they came downstairs and they knocked on the bathroom door, and I said, Al, are you in there? And I'm like, yeah. And he go, okay, we'll take the door off the hinges. We'll get you out. And I go, no, I'm not locked in. You don't understand. I said, this is what I seen, And the doorman goes, it's impossible, because the only way to get into this basement is through the front door or through the garage. But you have to have a code to get into that garage, to open that garage door. He goes, and then we went over to where the fire was, and you can see all the black soot on the ceiling of the parking garage. And the super's like, well, I got to clean this before these people get home from work, because they'll freak out if they see this, And I'm like, dude, those people live in this goddamn building. You know what I mean? I didn't hear them leave out the garage door. I didn't hear them leave out of the elevator. They must have went up the steps or something, So I leave that building, and I go around the corner, and I'm delivering to this little old Polish woman, and she lived on the second floor, but her mailbox was on the first floor. But I always went up and I put the mail between her storm door because she was old. She couldn't make those steps. You know what I mean? And she loved me for doing that. She always had coffee and cake or iced tea or lemonade for me. And we got to talking that day. She was waiting for me, and we got to talking. I said, yeah, I said, I was in this building, the Berkowitz building. And she's like, oh, that's a bad building, devil worshippers. And they lived across the street from this park called Untermeyer's Park. Now, Untermeyer's was famous for devil worshippers. Everybody in Yonkers knew devil worshippers worshipped in Untermeyer's Park. There were caves in Untermeyer's Park. My brother, when he was working for the hospital that is along the park, is right along the park. His office was up on the top floor, and he would work nights, and he would see the bonfires in the park, and they would find like dead German shepherds all the time in the park, and so she's telling me that she had a young couple living down on the first floor, and the woman was pregnant. And when the woman had the baby, her husband got connected to these devil worshippers in the park. And they all came to the house, and they did some kind of ceremony, and they conjured something up in her house, and they wanted to take the baby. I think they were going to go sacrifice it in the woods. But the mother was screaming, you can't take. And the old lady heard him. She called the cops. The cops came and arrested everybody. And then the woman left with the kid and went back to her parents' house. But she said after his people left, she would hear knocking on the wall downstairs. The lights would go on all the time, and the water would run. She would go downstairs, shut everything off. By the time she got back to her apartment, everything would be back on. And she was an old Polish woman from the other side. And around the corner was a Polish church, because it was like a Polish community up that area. And the priest came in from Poland, and she had the priest come to the house and do a exorcism on the apartment. She said, and it took that priest to get whatever they conjured up out of that apartment, because she said otherwise she couldn't rent it. She said she would have people come in, and they'd walk in and they would feel it, just say, no, we're out of here. She couldn't rent the apartment for a long time, she said, but now everything is good. She asked me if I wanted to rent it. I said, no, I'm good,
I'm good.
Well, thanks.
Thank you anyway.
But yeah, but then I ended up transferring to that East Station where my brother-in-law worked, and I ended up having the same truck driver who found the guy who hung himself. So we were hanging up at the bar one time watching a Yankee game or something, shooting pool. And I said to him, I said, rumor has it you found so-and-so. Any truth to that rumor? And he's like, yeah, that's true. I found him, And I was like, wow, so everything that the old man told me that I thought was, jerking my chain all came true. And just before I retired from the post office last year, I was that truck driver, and I delivered to that street every single day. And every time I went down that street, I looked at that tree, and I looked at that little meadow where that tree was. And I mean, I never felt anything negative on that block, anything like that. But every single day I went down that street, I thought of that story every single day. Yeah, that was the darkest thing. When I seen those guys and then my in-laws end up buying a condo across the street from the park.
Oh, it's so weird. Carol Garcia in our audience,
Yes.
our friend, she mentioned that her mother-in-law lives in the Berkowitz building.
Oh, does she?
Yeah, she said it was a really bad energy. I was throwing up her comments on the screen.
Oh.
That she's actually been there and doesn't like it at all. Wouldn't be in the elevator alone ever.
So my wife and I, when my in-laws moved across the street from the park, my wife and I were hanging out in the park one day, having like a picnic, right? And we're hanging out in the park, and my wife says, beautiful sunny day, absolutely gorgeous. And she's like, do you know where the caves are? And I was like, yeah, because Untermeyer's, even though it had a dark history, they always had like rock concerts there in the 70s and the 80s. And I was always there for every rock concert. And half of my friends had bands that I would roadie for, or I'd do security for, or something like that. You know what I mean? So it was always in that park. So I knew where all the caves were. So my wife and I were walking toward the back of the park, As we're getting close, they have what they call 1,000 steps that goes from one side of the park down to the bottom. As we get to the top of the 1,000 steps, it starts to get cloudy and dark and windy, and the wind is whipping like a tornado. And we start to go down the steps. And my wife is sensitive, but she'll never admit to it. We start to walk down the steps, and something goes over our heads, and you hear the whooshing of wings. And it goes over our heads. We both duck at the same time, like a bald eagle just went over us, right?
Mothman.
Nothing in front of us, but there on the aqueduct, where you have to go down the aqueduct to get to the caves. There on the aqueduct, we're both looking at the aqueduct like there's something there. We can both sense something is there looking at us. And my wife says, you know what? Maybe I'm getting goosebumps just talking about it. My wife says, you know what? Maybe we don't need to go to these caves. Let's go back. I said, you know what? I'll bring you to the bird cage. They got this giant bird cage that, and underneath it, they have like where they have like, they do like Shakespeare in a park and stuff, like a clamshell or something, I thought I'll bring you to the bird cage. I'll show you the bird cage because she wasn't familiar with the park. So as we're walking to the bird cage, we're on a service road where the truck with the parks that people use to clean the garbage cans and stuff, right? We're on the service road. We're walking. We're 100 yards away from the 1,000 steps, and we're still about maybe an eighth of a mile away from the bird cage, and we hear the whoosh again go over our heads again, and we both duck again. And there's this giant oak tree with this branch that goes across the road, but it's way up there, and she's looking up that branch, and I'm looking up at that branch, and she says, what are you seeing up there? And I was like, what are you seeing? And she turns to me, and this is the God's honest truth. The image I had in my mind's eye was, I don't know if you guys ever seen the movie The Gargoyles. It's an old 70s movie from the 70s. That the creature that was the leader of the gargoyles? He looked like the devil himself, right?
Oh, yeah.
No.
We'll get a funny story, but go ahead.
That's what I'm seeing up on that branch. So that's what I'm seeing in my mind. So when I asked her what she sees, she describes the creature from the gargoyles. And I go, that's what I see too. And she says, let's get the hell out of this park. And we have never gone back in that park in 30 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's crazy. Hey, Kristen was blown away because she saw a gargoyle when we were having our one and only real kind of attachment experience. Went on for a time, and she actually saw something she described as a gargoyle. She doesn't like to see, and that kind of stuff. But she saw it.
I saw it. That's why I
had a lot of wacky stuff going on.
Did you see it with your own two eyes, or did you see it in your mind's eye?
No, I saw it with my own two eyes.
Okay.
I looked up, and it was there, and it was literally flying. So it was flying towards us, and it was coming off of like a tree, and it was long, like a very tall person, very, very big wings. And it had that like monkey kind of face. And I'm good.
Yeah, she didn't enjoy that.
I didn't go outside for 2 days after that.
No, like I said, we've known my mother-in-law and father-in-law lived across the street from that park for 30 years. We never went back in. We never went. My wife was like, I'm good. We don't have to go back here anymore,
I think in our case, it was us that was kind of haunted. It wasn't so much the land, but it sounds like that land, it has an energy of its own. And maybe that was do you suspect is why David Berkowitz did what he did? Do you think he was maybe possessed by something?
Yeah, I believe Berkowitz was part of that satanic group that did the rituals in the park. I also believe that there were a couple of I believe there were people in his building that manipulated him. You know what I mean? I think he was there. They used him as a goat, you know what I mean, to do their dirty work. I don't believe he did all of those killings by himself, because there was too much distance between a couple of them that happened in the same night for him to get to one. And then, you go from the Bronx to way out in Brooklyn, and then, back to young. It was funny too, because at that time I was like 16, 17, was always at the lovers' lanes with my girlfriends, and my brother would say, "You better watch out for Berkowitz. He's shooting all the young lovers." And I'm like, "Berkowitz?" I said, "That dude is nowhere near us. He's not living in Yonkers." When they arrested him up the street, I was like, "Oh my God."
Yeah, right?
literally lived
Could have
like,
been this close.
a couple
Yeah.
of blocks away and stuff. Yeah, it was crazy.
I've heard that he may not have acted alone, right? There was
No, he didn't act alone. There's no way in God's green earth he acted alone. As a matter of fact, if you research the people he was involved with, one of them committed suicide in the house that was directly below the Sam, the guy who owned the dog. The dog's name was Sam. The guy who owned the dog was a retired Yonkers cop. Okay, and in front of his house were like 3 other houses, and these houses were built in the woods. So you actually literally had to deliver the mail to them in the woods. It was creepy. It was real creepy. And yeah, it was when I went into those woods to deliver mail, it was creepy. And they believe the father was the leader of the cult, and the 2 sons, and then one of the sons committed suicide after the father. Well, they claim he was ran off the road on the Major Deegan and was killed in a car accident. The other brother moved to North Dakota and died in was killed in North Dakota. He had some kind of accident in North Dakota and he died too. So somebody cleaned up all the work. Who was ever running the show, you know what I mean?
right.
Yeah,
No,
I don't know if any of those people still live in that building. I mean, that was a long time ago, 32 years ago. So I don't know if any of those people are still there. I haven't been in that building in forever, so I don't know what it looks like today, like the inside. I don't know if they're still using the pools like back then. It was a really,
the pool's open, and
Yeah,
it's co-op apartments now.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a high-end building. The people who lived there were high-end people, you know what I mean? And they were very nice people. I mean, I never had a problem with any of them, but there's no doubt in my mind that people I've seen in the robes lived in that building, and I believe they went up and down the steps so nobody would see them.
Sure.
And the building is really big. It's got a north side and a south side too. You know what I mean? So it's a huge building.
I put up a picture of it here a little earlier.
Yeah, and that picture doesn't even do it any justice.
No,
that's just the north end right there. There's a whole nother building just like that on the other side.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. That is something. So do you think that the dark rituals were people doing those were drawn to that area, like the grounds of that park, something about the earth, or do you think they are the ones that just brought it about because they have
I think that particular part of Yonkers, the North Yonkers, there was a lot of really large homes built up there, like what we call mini mansions today, mansions back then.
Yeah.
And they had there was a lot of tunnels that ran under the ground that went down to the river they were doing when they were bootlegging and stuff like that. I think there was a lot of rich people doing dark stuff in that area, and I think it had something to do with the Hudson River, the Palisades Cliffs, just the whole area in general.
A lot of elements, maybe a lot of elementals. What are your thoughts?
There probably ley lines up there and underground aquifers, because they ran the aqueduct from the Catskill Mountains all the way down through there, right down to the city. You know what I mean? So you have water flow. I'm sure there are ley lines there. I'm sure there are probably quartz crystal underneath the dirt as well, veins and stuff. And you have all this. You have the river that's constantly going up and down with the tides, and the Palisade Cliffs. I mean, it's just there's a lot of energy in North Yonkers for some reason.
Echo Leaf says, "Rich white dudes strike again."
There's no doubt in my mind that there were people, up in that area, especially back in the 20s and 30s, doing dark stuff. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah. So I mentioned, you mentioned the elements. I mentioned elementals. What are your thoughts on elementals?
Oh yeah, I mean, elementals. I'm sure the elementals are, they exist. Absolutely, they exist. There's I chased one out of a house one time. Woman was having problems with her co-op. She was being attacked in her apartment, scratched, and just having bad nightmares and all kinds of stuff. And I went there, and it was funny because I was just on the way. I was driving by. I was going somewhere else, but I said, you know what? I got to go by your condo. Let me stop in and just do a preliminary investigation. So when I went there, and I went into place, and there were some things that I thought were causing a lot of her problems, because she had the condo's dryer room was right up against her living room, and I thought she may have been getting a lot of EMF through there. You know what I mean? Through the wall. And I told her, I said, you're getting a lot of EMF through this wall. You're sitting here in this couch watching TV every night, but her dog would freak out and stuff, he would look in the corner and freak out. So I called my psychic, and my psychic started reading her, and my psychic said, but it was funny because I didn't tell this woman anything, but I felt like when I was in there, something was dodging me. When I went into one room, I felt like it went into the other. When I went into, and it was going back and forth. So when I called my psychic started saying, oh my God, this is the problem with this place. They built this condo in the middle of the woods. They cut down all the woods, and the elementals are pissed off. They destroyed these elementals' homes. And my psychic was saying, she's not the only one in this complex having issues. It's all the way. Everybody that apartment faced those woods where she said was having problems. But this particular woman was being scratched and beaten. She was getting black and blues. And so I'm talking to her, and my psychic is talking to her. And all of a sudden, it was like me and the woman were in a tornado, like the center of a tornado, and her dog was running around us going crazy. And my psychic was on the phone talking to her, and she was like, she couldn't keep her balance. She couldn't keep her strength. She couldn't stand up. I had to carry her, put her in her bedroom. I put the phone with her. I said, yeah, talk to my psychic. I'm going to start doing some investigating. And because I felt like something was dodging me. And I said, is something dodging me? She said, yes, something is dodging you. So I said, where do you see these orbs? And she said, I see them in the hallway. So I'm standing in the hallway, and I got the camera in my hand, and I'm aiming it towards her bedroom, when a white orb comes out of the bathroom wall, looks at me. I mean, the size of a baseball, looks at me, and the vibe I got was like, it said, oh shit, he's right here, and it takes off down the hall. And instead of snapping the photograph, I had my finger on the button of the camera. I couldn't believe what my eyes were seeing, because I had never seen one up close and personal. And it was so close, I could have touched it. I wanted to touch it to see what kind of energy I would get off of it.
Yeah.
But as soon as it seen me, I swear to God, it was like, oh shit, and it took off down the hall, and I took off after it. And then it made a right through the lady's kitchen, and I made a right through her kitchen. Then it made a left out her balcony door and into the woods. And I chased it right out into the woods, And I go back, and I'm talking to my psychic. It's like, you're not going to believe what I just experienced. And she said, okay, now this is what you need to do. You drove it out. You have to seal the property to keep it out, and yada, yada, yada. And we did a lot of cleansing and sealing and protecting to keep her apartment safe. As far as the neighbors go, I don't know. But eventually she sold that condo. She got out of there. Yeah. But that was crazy. I mean, to see, wow. I mean, I don't know what form it would have taken if it would have, changed, what I mean? Morphed into what it would have. But to just see this pure ball of light, the size of a baseball, just come out of the wall. And it was so close, I could have touched it. But it was so funny because, I swear to God, the vibe I got off, it was like, oh shit, he's like it was dodging me, was hiding from me, and it thought I was gone because I was just sitting there being quiet, getting ready to take the photograph. And it was crazy because her dog was running around us. We were trapped in this vortex of energy, and it was just swirling all around us. And I'm trying to talk to the psychic, talk to the woman. The dog, she got a big dog, I don't want to get bit by the dog, I mean, I got a good rapport with animals, but it was so crazy. It was just unbelievable. It was so crazy. Yeah.
That's wild. That is wild. And that reminds me of like the Tai Wonkas and
the
Puckwudgies. And I know you talked a little bit about that on Synchronicity. Plug on Tuesday nights at 8 o'clock. Right now, you can check out Anne-Marie Young and Lynn Monet and their show. But we think that is interesting, maybe responsible for a lot of like these sort of UFO sightings, these kind of glowing orbs. I mentioned a gentleman earlier. He's always got these orbs following him around. And he legit does. He's got lots of footage of it and stuff. And it doesn't appear to be faked in any way. And I suspect there might be an elemental connection, with that.
Yeah, I mean, I think my psychic told us that the thing that I seen in the hallway was a wood nymph, but it was an energy form. Mm-hmm. Or a tree nymph or a wood nymph, something like that. I think she said it was, which I wasn't familiar with at the time, elementals. It was like, I didn't even know what an elemental was until she explained everything to me. But there were all, look, I've spoken to enough Native Americans over the years up here, and they say, if you see these balls of lights in the woods, do not follow them. They'll leave you to your demise. Mm-hmm. Leave them alone. Now, on that interview I did with Lynn and Ann, I believe I spoke about it. We hit them with lasers when we seen them. And when we hit them with the lasers, they blinked out and they never came back the rest of the night. I don't know what the lasers did to them, but it's all energy. So energy on energy. I don't know if we knocked them out for a little while. Or
maybe
you're back into another realm. But I mean, I'm not about to go chasing them. They come to me and they want to communicate. I'll face to face. I don't have an issue with it, but I'm not chasing you to dark woods, trying to catch up with you. It's not going to happen. Absolutely not.
Vixen says wood nymphs equals dryads. That's what she calls them. Dryad.
Okay.
Heard that term. Anne-Marie, speaking of the show Synchronicity that you had talked to there, she said, yes, they are pissed about all the trees being cut down all over, and they very well may be. That may be why you get that in certain areas. You mentioned it was condos there or apartments.
Yeah, I mean, they built like a zillion condos in the middle of the woods. They really did a number on these woods, and not for nothing, but I also believe that the woman I was dealing with was psychic. And she was just in denial. She didn't want nothing to do with it. But my psychic told me she was psychic. When I was around her, I felt different. Like I said, I don't claim to be psychic, but different. And I experienced different energies in different ways, whether it's metallic taste or a pressure in my forehead or my fingers tingle or whatever, So different energies affect me differently. And when I was around her, I always had like a metallic taste in my mouth. So she had some kind of ability, I don't know what the clairvoyant thing is for that for taste. I forgot what it's called, but
there's a lot of clairs.
Yeah, I think there's 6 clairs or something like that. And she's I think taste is one of them. And she must have had that ability because when I was around her, I always got that metallic taste in my mouth, So
interesting.
Yeah,
that is super interesting.
And it wasn't only in her condo either, because like sometimes I'd go over and it's like, oh, could you bring me more sage or could you bring me more holy water, or whatever. And I would say, okay. I'd meet her in the parking lot and she'd be walking her dog. She had a big Rottweiler, and we'd walk the dog up and down the parking lot and we'd talk. And even when we were in the parking lot, just talking, me and her, the dog, walking the dog, I would get that feeling, I would get that taste in my mouth. So it wasn't just like the apartment or whatever, but I told her, I said, you gotta have maintenance, paint this wall. with an EMF blocker and paint, because there's definitely tons of EMF coming through this wall. So it'll give you cancer. It'll kill you.
You know, it's
Yeah,
not healthy.
It's
Not healthy, but
No,
it's
it's not healthy.
to be manipulated. I don't know why that is, but from unseen entities. You were going to ask about the Dogman. You want to?
Oh yes, you said you've had encounters with Dogmen. Have you ever heard about the Dogman Island? They dubbed it, and I think it's off the
Long
shores
Island.
of Louisiana. Is
Yeah,
it
I've
Long
heard
Island
about
or
Long
Louisiana?
Island.
It's Dog.
Well,
Dog
I know there's one off of Long Island. I don't know about the one. I think there is one off of Louisiana too, but I know there is an island, a little island off of Long Island.
Okay.
That they call Dogman Island as well. It's a very little island. Nobody goes on it for that reason. But I believe on one side of the island are Dogman, and the other side are Bigfoots, and it butts up against a camp. And I forgot how much property the camp has. It was like a couple of maybe 1,700 acres for this camp, you know, and then the island is just off of that. And so when the camp is out, which is most of the year except for the summer, they have, not only do they have the island to be on, but they could go into this camp as well. And I have family who work for the National Guard, not the National Guard, the Coast Guard. And they told me one time, called me up, said, dude, you're not going to believe what I seen tonight. And I was like, what's up? He goes, this is between my mouth to your ears. I was like, okay. And I mean, he's retired now, but he's like, they were cruising the coast of Long Island, the Long Island Sound, between Long Island and Connecticut. And they heard something jump into the water, a big splash. So they stopped the boat and they put the spotlight on and they're looking around, and they don't see anything. So before they got going again, they just waited a few minutes just to see if anything would come up from under the water. And when they finally got the spotlight to come back around, they were just off of that island, you know, and there was a Sasquatch swimming across the sound towards the Connecticut side. And he said it was doing like a frog swim, like that. So his arms were under all you see was his head, his arms and his legs kicking like a frog. What do they call it? The frog stroke or whatever they call that.
Yeah.
And he said swim right past our boat, it was swimming towards the other side. Now I don't remember if it was Connecticut it was swimming up to, if it was part of the Bronx, but I think it was further up to the North Shore where it was swimming towards Connecticut. He said, but it was swimming right across the sound like it was nothing.
Wow.
He goes, and every single person on that boat seen it with the spotlight. We followed it, didn't even look at them, just did its thing. And he said, of course, that didn't make the captain's log. He said, we left that out of the patrol log that night. He said, and that was off of that Dogman Island. Yeah. And he never seen a Dogman. Never got any reports of it from a Dogman there. But I have taken reports from people out on Long Island that have had experience, like college kids who are high school kids who go there to party, you know, and they get chased out, you know, depending on what side of the island they go on is depending on what shapes them out. Whether if they're on the south side, I believe it's Sasquatch. If they're on the north side, it's the Dogman. Yeah.
It's interesting that they're seen, and at the island, I'm sure that's not the real name of the island, but it has that nickname. I do think there is a Dogman Island, probably not its real name. Also in Louisiana.
I thought I heard that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sure there is. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, there's probably a few.
Yeah.
Actually, Dr. Google told me it was Morgan City.
Oh, that's what you looked up. Okay.
So,
That's it, Morgan City. Yeah.
A couple of questions and comments out here.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah.
Is that by Block Island?
Is that by Block Island?
No, Block Island is way too far out. No, this is in between what you would call it, closer to the city.
All right. Carol asked, have you come across any imps in your travels at all?
No. Gnomes, fairies.
Gnomes.
Yeah, gnomes and
Now, does a
fairies.
gnome
Yeah.
appear like a gnome as we know them to be garden gnomes? Is that kind of what?
Yes,
what's
the ones we seen looked exactly like garden gnomes. Yes.
That's
no kidding.
And
No
actually,
kidding. I swear to God. I mean,
and
3 people seen it. There were 3 people on the investigation. We all seen it. As a matter of fact, we had 2 SD cards going on that camera. One in the camera, one on the monitor that we had attached to the camera, because we had attached a bigger monitor to the camera. And me, my partner Brian, and our photographer Bill all seen it run from one tree to another. And we all looked at each other like, did you see that? And he said, yeah. And then another one came out and ran from one tree to another. And it was like, all 3 of us can't be having the same hallucination. You know what I mean? And then we went over and we checked with those trees, like what was behind those trees. And there was nothing there.
Wow.
That's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, it was the craziest night in the world. I mean, just mind boggling. It was really insane. Yeah.
Now, I think I asked you this question when you're on Lynn and Ann's show, and there's Lynn now is omnipresent. Says, love this guy. That do you think that creatures like this and other paranormal entities are able to manipulate, or this is really true, I think, in the case of aliens and alien abduction phenomena, present themselves in a way that they want to be seen?
Yes, absolutely. I know when we had a, long story short, we had like an alien abduction going on in my house. Me and my son were being abducted, and without getting into the whole story, my daughter was Dorothy that night. It was Halloween for the Wizard of Oz, and the one that was taking my son out the window in the light appeared to her as Dorothy.
Oh wow!
That's how
she fought with it because she wasn't going to let her take her brother. You know what I mean? And in the meantime, I was in the next room over having my own experience, which I thought was a dream until my daughter started screaming.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah.
Like to gain her trust.
Yeah.
I mean, it validated what I was experiencing in my room.
Right. We call it playing roles. We think it also happens with like the spiritual type dead and ghosts. So sometimes they'll come across as something they are not. Maybe it's like a demon or something like that.
Dreaded D word.
Drop names like Beelzebub and things of that nature. And
yes. Yeah. No, we were in an investigation one time with a group of ladies. It was me. I don't know if you know who Tim Dalton is from Ghost Prowler. It's from Connecticut. Me and Tim, and it was a group of I think what's their name? Ladies of the Ghost Hunt. They're from around here, and we were all in Connecticut. I think Torrington or something like that, somewhere in there. And we were doing it in this really old house. I mean, it was a mansion, and I had gotten there before everybody, and I did a walkthrough, and I didn't feel anything negative in the place, And I had my psychic read it, and my psychic was freaking out. Because she says, you got to leave right now. And I'm like, why? She goes, I see an army of shadow people all massing in one room, and they have no heads. You got to get out of there.
Wow.
And I started laughing hysterical. And she goes, well, what's so funny? I said, the guy who owns the house is a deep sea diver, and what you're seeing are all his wetsuits hanging up. He had a room of nothing but wetsuits hanging up, like every different, and they're all black. So I'm like, she's seen them as an army of shadow people.
Oh, that's wicked funny.
Wow.
Yeah. And she's like, what's Al? She's like, Al, it's not funny. You got to get out of there. And I'm like, no, let me explain what you're saying, And we were getting ready to go down into the basement, and the ovilus started saying stuff like, because the girls were asking the questions on their ovilus, me and Tim were just like, we were there, but it was like their investigation, because we had been there before. And the girls were asking like, who's down there? And it would say demon. and it would say, you know, devil and you should pray and on all this crazy stuff. And they were freaking out. And I was like, it's bullshit. And they go, what do you mean it's bullshit? I said, it's bullshit. He's just trying to scare you. Whoever is here is trying to scare you out of this house. I said, because I've been through this house from top to bottom. I don't feel anything dark and negative. Then when we went down in the basement and we were doing videos and asking questions and doing EVPs, we weren't getting anything until I brought up the word slave master. And then everything went absolutely insane down in the basement, just went crazy. But that just goes to show you that negative entities will try to scare you out by using, you know, names of demons or whatever, you know what I mean? And they could even show themselves as a demon or get into your subconscious, see what scares you, and then show you what you're afraid of, you know, in your mind's eye. Someone's more power enough to do that. Yeah.
Yeah. They seem to be able to read us real well and, you know your name and know things about you. So it'd be easy enough to present in a way that would really scare you if that was what they were maybe feeding off of or what they wanted from you. Right. And I know we've read about alien abduction cases where the aliens told the person being abducted, I'm presenting myself this way because you'll understand it. You know, it's something from your memory. Appearing as like a gray, you know, as a typical gray with the large almond shaped eyes. So yeah, I think that phenomenon is really interesting. On the UFO side,
they also appear as like animals too, deer and owls and stuff like that as well. You know, the aliens anyway. You know,
that's a lot to unpack when you think about it between the fairies, the aliens, and you have to think there's got to be some kind of crossover. You know, with this,
it's energy, it's all energy.
Yeah,
so we think it's all under the same umbrella, like you were saying earlier. We you know think everything is all under the same umbrella of paranormal.
It's phenomena.
The phenomena, right?
Right.
Yeah, it's phenomena. Right, like I said, in the ether of the universe, there is no such thing as paranormal. Yeah, it's all normal on the ether of the universe, and it's all energy, vibration, frequency, and intent. Because I tell people all the time, I said, no matter what you're investigating, whether it's ghosts, cryptids, or UFOs, your intention is to make contact. You know, we sit out and we do CE5s, right? And our intention, and everybody who's with us, our intention is to make contact. And we've been lucky enough to bring some craft in, you know, a couple of times here and there. It's the same thing when you're ghost hunting. Your intention is you're doing EVPs. Your intention is to make contact. When you're out in the middle of the woods squatching, you're doing all these different techniques to bring the Bigfoot in. It's because you're putting your intention out there to make contact. So it's all connected. They're all connected. You know, I can't tell you, you know, in the beginning, I didn't believe it, you know, and I've come a long way over the years. My mind has changed so many times. I can't even remember the stuff I forgot. Yeah.
Yeah, I hear
we
you.
Understand.
We fully understand that, you know.
I'm sure you do.
One thing
takes one to know one, you know what I mean?
Certain rules, and it was going to follow these rules, and then like physics goes right out the window, and you go, rules don't apply here.
And that's another thing I always told people. I said, physics as we know it don't apply to extraterrestrials. You know what I mean? Our physics don't apply to them. Now, maybe quantum physics apply to them, but the physics that we do, the math that we do here, our physics, our regular physics don't apply to them. I always was a big believer in that, you know?
Yeah, and quantum may apply, like synchronicity or manifestation may have some roots in that quantum physics, but you know, it's not my forte. But you know, I try to read what we can, you know, about it and try to learn.
Research everything we can. We have people on, wonderful people like you to come on our show.
Thank you.
Greg Koss asked, was Al in the military?
Yes.
No, I was never in the military. No.
All right. Yeah, Greg was, and he's retired from the post office. So about that as well.
He's a brother in arms. Okay.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
When you work at the post office, it's like being in the military, believe me.
Carlito has a comment, says, Al, tell them about the volleyball-sized orbs you've seen shoot up through the trees, brother.
Oh yeah, well we've seen orbs out in investigations. Like I said, we've seen all different colors. every single color you can possibly think of, from sizes the size of golf balls to size, I would say nothing bigger than a beach ball. I haven't seen anything bigger than a beach ball, but from a golf ball to a beach ball, and every color under the sun. Yeah, I mean, we've experienced it all. Like I said, and our psychic believes that the ones that are like tennis ball size, stuff like that, she believes that's actually fairies, and that's their energy before they manifest into a physical form,
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, maybe we shot a couple of fairies with our lasers that night. I don't know,
Right?
I don't know, but yeah, I mean, that's what she said. She said they were fairies because she told us before we even got there. She goes, okay, when you get to this next location, you're going to see fairies and gnomes and shadow figures. And we just started laughing, like, come on, we're 4 miles deep in the middle of the woods. There's no one here but us, We've seen everything, she said, Actually, we at one point, we heard a family walking down the Appalachian Trail, okay? A mother and father. You can hear them talking, murmuring, 2 small children laughing and giggling, kicking rocks and stuff. And here we are, 3 large men sitting in the dark with, 18-inch machetes and 10-inch survival knives. And I said, we should put our lights on so we don't scare the hell out of these people when they step out on the Appalachian Trail. And we heard them walk right to the edge of the trail, and they never stepped out. When we went in to look for them to see if they were okay, we didn't find it. We called our psychic, and she said we were in a time-space continuum, and those people were going to be there tomorrow.
Wow.
That's
yeah.
great.
I mean, it's just like, we're from
wow.
New York. We're New York guys. It's hard for us to wrap our heads around stuff like that.
Is it always the same psychic that you're working with?
Yeah, I've been working with the same one for a long time, but we do have other psychics that we use. Like I used Katie Turner one time, a couple of times. I used her for a cleansing, and a couple of, I think 2 cleansings I used her for, because my psychic was going through back surgery and she wasn't up to the job. And I'm good friends with Katie. Lynn said she's good friends with Katie too. And Katie vouches for Lynn. She said Lynn's the real deal too. And I used her a few times. And then I don't know if you know Miss Aida. She's the Hoodoo practitioner.
That sounds familiar.
And she just did a couple of things on the Travel Channel, I think, with Shippy. What's his name? Something Shippy. I can't think of the guy's name. Big guy, Shippy. Something Shippy. And she helped me with a couple of like love spells. Like we had a couple of people that had love spells put on them that she had to break, and one had a curse put on them that I needed her help to break. Like I said, a lot of this stuff is above my pay grade. You know what I mean? I'm actually supposed to do I've never done an exorcism, but I'm supposed to get together with John Zaffis, Larry Elward, and his wife, Deb Chambers Elward, and do an exorcism. And I told them I would just drop them off and leave because it's above my pay grade. But Deb said, if it's safe, I'll let you know, so you could actually stay and film, And I was like, okay, but I don't really need to bring anything dark or negative home with me, But so there are people. Friend of mine, Chris Reinhardt, he's a Bigfoot, Berkshire Mountain Sasquatch. He's got his own Discover Sasquatch. He's got a YouTube channel, and he does his research out of the Berkshires. He was down in Florida, the Green Swamp, and he brought something dark home with him from the Green Swamp. Another guy who went into the woods never thinking about protecting himself from dark entity, and he brought something home with him, and his cat wouldn't go in his studio, and his grandkids were seeing, monsters. And I called Deb because she's a psychic, and like I said, Larry's a exorcist, and I called Larry and Deb, and they happened to live like in the next town over from him. So they went over and they cleansed his house and sealed everything, and everything's been great since then, So like I said, I know a lot of people. When I was hanging out with Zaffis, first time I met John, I said to him, let me ask you a question. He's like, what? I said, have you ever ran into a demon that knows you? And he said, let me tell you a story, Al. He said, we had just finished doing an exorcism in Boston, and I was down in Manhattan, lower Manhattan, for a symposium. What do you call that? Down at the Bowery. And he was walking past like all the homeless people and everything. And some homeless guy jumped up, like just jumped up and ran over to him and looked him dead in the eyes and says, "I know who you are, John Zaffis. Do you know who I am?" And John said, "I knew exactly who he was. He was the guy, the demon. We just got rid of the people out of the person in Boston. It was the same one."
No way.
Wow.
Hand to God, I swear
Yeah.
to God. You run into John, you ask him that about that story, he'll tell you, yes, no. I swear to God. He goes, and that wasn't the first time that happened to him. They know who he is, you know, they really do. And like I said, I've been to locations where my psychics say they know you're coming, you know. They're going to be dodging you, they're going to be running, they're going to be hiding. Or if I'm going squatching, he'll say they're looking for. We were doing an insane asylum one time, and it was an old lady at the insane asylum. And my psychic said she can't wait to see you guys. She's excited to see you. And when we were doing the investigation, we ran into a bunch of teenagers in there doing an investigation. They were down in the morgue. And they said, "Hey, we just got this EVP, check it out." And it was an old lady telling them to get the hell out, that they weren't wanted down there because she was waiting on us to get down there. And I got photographs of her. She appears as a blue mist, and then she went to like lightning, almost like a lightning, and then or like a plasma, and then you could see like an old lady's face with buns, and she has a big nose and a big chin. It was crazy, absolutely crazy.
Wow. Yeah.
Well,
Carlito's saying you've got clear pictures.
yeah.
Yep. And Lynn's like, yeah, love Katie Turner. Ann says love Katie Turner as well. I've seen fairies come in on monarch butterflies.
Which I would love.
Oh, wow.
This? Yeah, I had one fly up to me while we were in South Carolina, Lynn.
Oh, wow. That's
I
cool.
thought it was kind of like hanging out for a little while. And
That's the
flew out.
monarch butterfly, the yellow one.
The yellow ones.
That was with Ann, and Ann always sees them. That's Ann's mother's sign.
Anthony says, "Love the show. Thank you. And we love yours as well."
Yes, we do.
Thank you.
So Wraith Hunters. Excellent show. Excellent guy. And what else we got out here? I'm trying to catch up with some of the comments. A lot of banter out there. Yellow is my dad, Ann says.
Oh, Dad. Sorry, Ann.
But yeah, very cool. Very cool stuff. I know it's getting close to the hour. You mentioned CE5s, and just for our audience who doesn't know what a CE5 is, and we understand it's with intention and meditation, maybe you could explain a little bit to them what that is.
It's when a group of people, all like-minded people, get together with one intention. They put this thought out there into the ether that they want to make contact with UFO alien crafts. I don't call them UAPs, I call them UFOs. And I'm old school.
Yeah.
We're with you.
And you put this energy, this thought out into the universe, and you put it out there. And what we try to do is get everybody to meditate. My partner Brian walks everybody through a meditation. He uses binary beats to get him to where he has to go. I use Native American flute music. The flute music seems to work the best for me. Not the drumming, but the flute. And we all get to this. All of our thought combines as one out into the ether. And I swear to God, I think we've done it. I've done it with Brian like 4 times. And I think out of the 4 times, we've brought craft in 3 times, So it really does work, but you have to have the right-minded people. And you have to also believe the people that you're working with have to have the right energy, And I know Brian and I, we kind of feed off each other, and we have the right energy. And we just been like I said, when I was 8 years old, my mother followed her up watching the late news one night, and I came out of my bedroom and I'm taking these giant steps, and my father says, "Where are you going?" And I said, "I'm going home." And he goes, "Oh, really?" I go, "Yeah." He goes, "Where's that?" I go, "To the moon." I said, "I'm from the moon." I told him, "I'm not from down here." and he kicked me in the ass. He put me back to bed to go to sleep. But, you know, I've always had a connection with space. I love sky watching. I have a telescope. I sky watch all the time. And I've been obsessed with it since I was a child. I think when I had my first sighting when I was 10, ever since then, I've just been obsessed with, you know, space, you know, and I always tell my son, wouldn't you love to go up there and look at the earth from up there? And he's like, no, I got no desire to be up there. I said, man, I would kill to be up there and look down at this planet, you know. It's just who I am, you know. It's my energy. It's the way I always was. I was always fascinated with deep space and learning the constellations and the planets. I was just obsessed with that stuff, you know.
I love the use of music that you mentioned. You mentioned you like the Native American music, and that the other person using binaural beats. We were using some binaural beats last night with our spirit box, blending it into the channel.
As we were doing an Estes
method.
Yeah.
And I found that, you know, would be a real good way to relax, and we had a great sessions. So that, you know, there's definitely something to that. I love HemiSync. We love HemiSync. Is really interesting. Gateway experience. You know, if you're into that kind of thing, it can take you out of your body, you know, get into some cool stuff.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yep. Yeah. Now, when you did the Estes experiment, did you do it the traditional way, or did you do it the original way?
Well, explain. And
the way it was explained to me, John Zaffis explained it to me. The original way to do Estes is telepathically. The people asking the question have the person who's away from them has doesn't have and you don't have the spirit box. You don't hear it you don't have the headphones on. They ask a question in another room, and then you're supposed to get that message and relay it and answer and ask the question to like a voice recorder, and then see what comes out. That's the way John explained it to me. I mean, we do it the traditional way with the headphones and the spirit box, and we have amazing success. Yeah, absolutely. But we did try it that night with the old way, and I didn't have any success with it at all. So, you know, it didn't work for me.
That's really cool. But I would say that's different. Estes goes back to the guys there from Hellier.
Yeah,
and
Connor
Estes,
Randall.
Colorado.
Yeah.
But that's just where the name comes from. But this idea, I mean, there were experiments, parapsychological experiments done with the Gansfeld method and things of that nature years ago too, you know. So there is a lot of stuff out there. But we're doing it the way you do it. You know,
the traditional way. I've never heard of doing it without that.
No.
Way. John explained it to me, and I was like, wow. He goes, yeah, what you usually do is the person who's receiving the telepathic communication is usually a psychic or a sensitive.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And then you ask a question in another room, they hear it in their mind, in their head, they ask the question, and then you see what you get. After you finish asking all the questions, you see what you get on your digital voice recorder or whatever recorder you're using. Like I said, that night I went all old school. I even had one of those little mini Sony with the reel-to-reel cartridges. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I went completely old school that day. You know what I mean?
That's cool as heck. I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. We actually
what I love about those little tape recorders, because there you go. The magnetic tape recorder, you don't have any what do you call that? Any of that digital what's the word Brian always uses? There's like noise, digital noise. I forgot what he calls it. There's a name for it.
White
Brian's might no, not white noise. It's I can't think. I'm drawing a blank now.
We're not sure either. I'm not familiar with the white noise of the analog because it kind of creates that hiss. You know, it's like that Panasonic. There's a digital recorder. What is that? DR7.
Yeah.
DR60, whatever. Yeah, that they all use.
They go for a ton of money on eBay if you can find them.
Yeah.
Right.
And, our friend Joe Rione has one, and he was telling us a really funny story.
Yeah, he hated it
for years because he just thought, "Oh, what a piece of crap! Why did I buy this?" And Now he loves it. It's his
So one day you get a
go-to
scream, an EVP.
go-to recorder, and you played us some of the recordings off it. Were absolutely stunning, really.
Yeah, Timothy Dalton uses that all the time, and he gets some. I mean, he gets a lot of screams. You can't make them out though. I don't know what the hell they're saying. You know what I mean? So, I mean, yes, you're getting something coming through, but it's screaming so loud that you can't make out what they're saying. You know, I don't know. Like I said, I have 2 digital voice recorders. One that runs continuously for 72 hours, and one that's voice activated. You know, I will say this to people who may not know any better: if you do go on investigations, if you're going to bring multiple recorders, make sure they're from different manufacturers, because everybody sets their frequencies differently. And what you may not get on one, you may get on another one.
Oh, yeah. As far as the microphone and the recorder.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. They tend to pick up more than our ears can hear anyways, which is
absolutely.
They have a wider range than the human ear. Any decent recorder. We're like mixing it up. This one here is actually new, and got this on Amazon, and it has a way of taking the cassette recording. It does use actual cassettes,
yes,
which are harder to come by. Also, I had to get on Amazon.
Yes, I got all my stuff too from Amazon. Yeah. Oh, Brian says the digital recorders create an artifact noise. That's what he calls it, artifact.
An artifact.
And yes, it's an artifact noise where you won't get that with actually metallic tape, you know?
Yeah. It's kind of a different noise, but this has a USB, and you can convert your cassette right off the box into an MP3, which is kind of neat.
Oh, wow. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. We just broke that out at Haunting at the Mill and the South Carolina show we were talking about. So with Marilyn Bass.
Yes,
who's out here in the audience, and of course our other friends. Guys are great. Greg said it's a double blind Estes because 2 of us do the Estes. We're in different locations. We do it on air.
Wow, interesting.
You know, so like Kristen and I take turns, and then Greg's going under, and we've got people moderating. 2 moderators to kind of write everything down, and they're asking questions, and yeah. So we got 2 people at a time.
We tried to
going under, if you will.
We tried to add things to it more experimental wise all the time as well. Like one day we had a camera focused on what was it, the mirror, the black mirror, the scrying mirror.
Oh God, yeah.
Audience, and
try to do different things, and we're doing our confirmations with pendulums and dowsing rods as well last night, and it was super fun. That's Metaphysical Crossings, just to let people know, if Greg's show, if our audience doesn't already know, because I think most of them do, it's you can find that on Facebook at Shadow Hunters Events, and is it just Shadow Hunters Events and Paranormal? They change the name. Shadow Hunters will get you there if you search for it. But woohoo! Hey good Mill.
Hey
good Mill.
I mispronounced.
Yeah, I think one time I was using. Because we didn't have a DVR system set up, we just had a camera filming me, and people were like 3 rooms away, and we were using walkie-talkies, and they would ask the question through the walkie-talkie, you know, and then I would say the answer that I was hearing in the SB7 spirit box, and back when I heard it, I would turn the walkie-talkie on so they could hear me, and they said that everything I was saying was spot on. I mean, at one point I had so many people, so many different voices coming in at once that I had to tap out. I was like, okay, wow, overwhelming, way too many, you know? But but we did find out that night that you can't have, what do you call it? Those little round ones with the lights that go on. I forgot what they're called. You know, the boxes that make all that noise, those little round boxes. Damn, I can't think. Well, you can't have one of them. The REM pods, yes, thank you. I'm blanking out tonight. You can't have a REM pod around a walkie-talkie. The walkie-talkie will make it go crazy. Yeah,
they do. They make them go nuts.
Yeah, they make them go nuts. Frequencies.
Yeah, absolutely. There was something else I wanted to ask you. I'm sorry, you're calling.
I had to edit a comment. I am so sorry. I'm very red in the face for that.
I was kicking your butt, not.
Just kicking myself.
Not licking,
I said I'm licking myself in the butt.
That's funny.
It's a good thing you caught it. didn't try.
We got two things going over here. Like, oh my God. What did you
Oh, that's hysterical. That's absolutely hysterical.
They're having fun with
Oh
that.
boy.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Mary Lynn and
Yeah.
Lynn
Yeah, I'm sorry we never got around to all the Dogman stuff. We kept getting sidetracked.
That's all right.
If you
All
have
right.
me back, I know if you have me back another time, we'll
Yes.
strictly
We would love
do
to have you
Dogman.
back.
You know what I mean? And I promise
There's,
I'll tell you. I'll tell you everything that ever happened to me.
Yes,
there's
please do. I'd love to have
a lot
that.
of areas we'd like to talk about that we didn't quite get to, including the Dogman, maybe some more alien stuff. And of
I
course,
got a lot of alien
friend
stuff. Like I
goes-
said, I just touched on that thing briefly with me and my daughter. I mean, it goes so much deeper than that. Absolutely.
all right. Whoa. So where can people find you, Al?
Bronxville Paranormal Society.com. My partner has got us on every social media site known to man, but I usually hang around Facebook. That's my one site that I hang around. So if you want to reach out to me on Bronxville Paranormal Society Facebook group or Facebook page, the New York State Dogman Project on Facebook, the New York State UFO Project on Facebook, and the North American Sasquatch Organization on Facebook, or you could just reach out to me personally on Messenger. And if you have any questions, comments I didn't get around to tonight, I'd be more than happy to answer them for you.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And we're going to look up those sites on Facebook and
think we
start
already
following
are.
them. Yeah, if we're not already.
I'm pretty sure we are.
Excellent. Because yeah, it's great information. It's been a joy to talk to you, and we'd love to have you
Yes,
back.
thank you so much.
It was my pleasure. It was my pleasure. Absolutely my pleasure.
Wonderful.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. And I want to thank everybody in our audience tonight. You know who you are. There's a lot of you out there. We really appreciate it. And thank you for joining us. And
Thank you.
we will see you guys on Saturday. Thanks, guys.